Hello, everyone. My name is Meagan Stout, and I am the CEO of Tech Advisors. While you're joining us today and everybody's coming in, I'm going to launch a poll. We'd love to see who's here with us today and give everybody a moment to get settled. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then I'll introduce my guest speaker momentarily. Let's go ahead.
Welcome, everyone. As we're launching this poll, feel free to answer it now. It should be on your screen.
And while we have the poll launched, I want to go ahead again, welcome you to our webinar. My name is Meagan Stout. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tech Advisors. And today I'm joined by my co-founder, Al-Husein Madhany, who is our Chief Strategy Officer, but he's also a former EA and Chief of Staff. He's now the CHRO of an AI startup. So he has done and seen a lot of things over the course of the past few years. He also is one of our top coaches here at Tech Advisors. And so, as a quick reminder for you who are joining us for the first time, we can't see or hear you, but hopefully you can see and hear us. So if you can't, please let us know. The chat has been enabled. If you have any questions throughout this webinar, feel free to throw it in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on it so we can go ahead and answer your questions. And otherwise, welcome and want to jump right in since we have a few people in the mix now. So Al-Husein, oh, somebody joining us from Berlin. That's exciting. It's late for you. Al-Husein, excited to have you join us here today. What today is meant to be for is really a look back at the past 3 years. We've been coaching individuals at Tech Advisors, collectively over 50 people across venture capital, private equity, real estate, banking, consulting, legal. Like the industries don't seem to matter as much as where executives and want their administrative staff to level up and sort of move from good to great. So excited to kind of do a recap with you to look back so we can look forward and really advise our community on where this role is going and how they can really level up and become indispensable. So I'd love to hear from you, Al, in thinking sort of collectively the top sort of most common requests that you've seen from your coaching clients. Like, what have been the areas that they've been requesting coaching on over the past 3 years?
Great question, Megan, and welcome everyone from around the world to another Tech Advisors monthly webinar. Of course, we're talking about coaching, and as Megan's shared, we've coached over 50 executive assistants, chiefs of staff, project managers, C-suite leaders in this role. And since we've launched the company in 2020, now we're 3 years into the company, and it's really a look back. And as to Megan's question, is what have we seen? Well, Megan, in one word, we have seen it all. Right? Remember what
Feels like it.
It does feel like it. Remember what 2020 brought us? 2020 brought us the global pandemic, and executive assistants and executive business support professionals like the ones on this call today have had to step up in their roles in ways that they never previously imagined. To take us through a lockdown, a global pandemic, the change in the way business happens and the way remote work happens. And then, of course, coming out of the pandemic, the chaos and the confusion of, are we hybrid? Are we in person? Are we remote? Are we distributed? Who are we as a company? Who are we as an industry? And I would argue that executive assistants that we've been coaching have led in the forefront of those efforts with their executives, whether it be the C-suite or otherwise. We have seen significant growth in the industry in the past 3 years. So, as I said at the top, we have seen it all. And what I mean is, in another word, I would say is we have seen change as the only constant, change as the only constant in the past 3 years. So at the beginning in 2020 and 2021, when money was plentiful, unlike the current, backlash of the Fed printing and the interest rates rising that we're experiencing now in the new macro environment, we saw significant growth in the executive assistant professional. Many of the executive assistants and C-suite executive assistants I've been coaching and others in our staff have been coaching actually built entire teams, administrative business partner teams, hired significantly within their organizations, not just within the executive assistant team, but within other parts of the organization, and supported that. And so what I would imagine now, what some of us are experiencing is a pullback of that in this new macro environment. And we've coached our executive assistants on how to pull back in such an environment, and in some cases, unfortunately, have to let people go in this environment while maintaining those relationships and ensuring that they are keeping business moving forward. So in a word, Meagan, I would say, we've seen it all in the last 3 years at TAC Advisors. Our coaches have seen it all, and change has been the only constant through hyper growth to now this slow downturn. But we are seeing, silver lining around these clouds, and we can talk about that shortly.
Yeah. Hearing you say is it's really just ebbed and flowed with the needs of the business. And especially if you're a C-level EA or chief of staff and you're working very closely with the executives who are making the business decisions, what the people who've been being coached on have been really tied to helping take their business initiatives sort of to the next level. Is that right?
That's 100% right. It's all about going to the next level, right? And so what a lot of companies have experienced during this time is raising revenue and ensuring that that revenue is not depleted. Money was very plentiful in 2021, and cash has become very tight in 2023. And so what most corporations are doing, if you are reading the press or even reading the tea leaves, is they are hesitant to hire. They are slow to hire because they have to extend runway, meaning they have to extend their cash preserves, their balance sheet, and the largest expense for any corporation is usually two: personnel, payroll, and real estate. Which is why it's very interesting that in this tightening macro environment, we also are experiencing executives and teams that are promoting the idea of coming back to work and willing to spend on real estate even above personnel costs, or even willing to spend on real estate while they are reducing headcount. And so, again, thinking through what may happen and what's to come for 2024 and 2025. We are seeing signs of a rebound in 2024. How soon that will come, nobody knows. So much of it depends on the macro and the interest rates and the Fed raising interest rates during the rest of this year or not. But it actually affects our daily lives. It affects our mortgage rates. It affects our gas prices. It affects the ability to pay off student loans. It also affects the ability for our businesses that we support every day to raise resources as well.
Yeah. So let's go back to end of 2020, 2021, when money was plentiful, if we go in chronological order, right? For the teams that you were, and individuals that you were coaching them, like it sounds like building and managing EA teams was a big piece, increasing revenue, doing fundraising. Can you walk us through a little bit more specifically on exactly the types of tasks that you were or areas that you were coaching for building EA teams, and how the EA plays an instrumental role in raising money or generating additional revenue for the company?
Absolutely. It starts with attitude, y'all. It starts with attitude. And that attitude is the ability to, in a remote world, right? 2020, we're fully remote. COVID's here. It's in a remote world, raising your hand and saying, put me in, coach. Sign me up. Let me take that on. It's about showing up and asking for a seat at the table, even if it's not provided. It's saying, I can take that on, and expressing your value through your attitude first, even if you're not tapped, even if you are not being asked to help in that regard, the very fact that you have said, how can I help, and raise your hand, goes a long way with executives, particularly in the remote world. And so when it comes to smaller things, so let's say in 2020 or even 2023, as we are today, there are a lot of companies that are actually still raising money in order to survive this downturn, and they are investor relation teams, usually consisting of the CEO, the head of finance, maybe a board member. But there is very private and confidential information that they cannot be sharing with the rest of the population. But raising your hand and saying, look, I know Asana, I know Notion, I know, Excel, I can task manage this in a way that, is good for you and good for the company, because I'm already managing your travel, I'm already managing, your calendar. So let me task manage this as well. That goes a really long way. Some of the two of the tools that I've seen executive assistants master in the last 3 years is Asana. And of course, the competitor to Asana was Trello, but I think Asana has really beaten Trello out in the last couple of years, especially after they went public. As you know, the co-founder of Asana also co-founded Facebook. And Notion. Notion is coming up in a very, very big way. I would recommend any one of you, if you want to up your game, you include being a Notion ninja on your resume. That is something that is increasingly being demanded in the workplace in the same way that Slack was being demanded of executive assistants 8 years ago. And now it's commonplace, like Teams. It's like you just have to know it like email. Well, Notion is becoming that as well. I would describe Notion as, for those of who are asking and wondering what is Notion. Notion is the best of Google Docs and Excel, like Google Sheets and Google Docs, plus Jira, which is an Atlassian product, which also does ticketing and creates an internal wiki for your corporation divided by 2. So it's basically, and engineering is really what's driving the adoption of Notion, engineers on your teams. And if you raise your hand and you say, look, I know Notion, and let me help you let us implement Notion across our company, that is a way to add value in a way that others are not. Again, it starts with raising your hand and starts with plugging in the tasks that you know how to do to add value to the broader business. And the one case I mentioned was investor relations. There are others. I can go
Coda
into
is
more.
another one. Coda is like kind of Notion's competitor.
That's right.
So we see a
Coda.
lot of people who do like kind of one or the other. And
Yeah,
then for Asana, like the other competitor is Monday.com.
that's right.
So, and people have their preferences, right? Like there are people who are just like obsessed with Monday or ClickUp. ClickUp's another one that's become really popular over the past couple of years. But really, it's these systems that are, you have productivity, project management systems. You have these sort of, I would argue Notion's almost like a resource like platform. Really, it's like a place to keep all of your knowledge and resources within the company and make it really easily accessible and retrievable. But yeah, I would say that those implementing those systems and being like the master owner of those systems within companies is a big way to differentiate yourself within the role.
That's right. And part of it is because one has to look, when I say it starts with attitude, in a fully remote world or in a hybrid world, or when we're just getting back to the office, whatever your situation may be, you need to show up and you need to be present. Otherwise, you will be forgotten. And I don't say that lightly. And I know it's hard to hear because we are very much a support function. We are behind the scenes. We're not up in front of the employee base. But if you need to be present in Slack, you need to be communicating with people. If there is a request to be back in the office, again, you have to show value by showing up into the office and being side by side with your executive. One of the things we're seeing right now with a lot of our clients, Megan, as you know, and you can speak to this, is a lot of our clients are like, look, I just want somebody in the office with me.
Yeah.
Because I'm bringing in investors, I'm bringing in guests, I'm bringing in executives, and I just can't manage, the receptionist role, and I need somebody here with me, and the office is vacant. Uh,
Right.
and somebody to partner with me on kind of building up that culture for that back end office culture. You're seeing that as well, yeah, Megan?
Oh, absolutely. I would say the lion's share of our clients are hybrid or even 4 to 5 days a week in office now. And it's because they really do value the administrative function, regardless of level, whether it's, you know, office coordinator, office manager, all the way up to C-level EA, chief of staff, still very much being the culture creator and culture carrier within the company. And the sort of central spine of the organization, sort of keeping everybody together. It's a lot easier to compel people to do things and grab materials and shuffle people along when you're physically in person than when you're pinging them over the internet, like regardless of the tool. And like you said, like there is value in in-person meetings. I mean, it's a huge part of why I travel, and I travel to go meet with our clients, to meet with candidates. That in-person piece is so important, and people are willing to pay more for it. People want somebody with them side by side. Somebody, they want them physically in the meeting next to them, reading body language, and so much of that can still be lost, even if it is over Zoom. So it's something that's incredibly, incredibly important.
Yeah, and to that point, and here's the reality. I think with many of us in our roles, because we have developed over years a sixth sense,
Mhm.
uh, in a sense that, like, if I'm an executive and you're my executive assistant sitting across from me, I don't have to say anything, but I can look a certain way and immediately what I'm thinking. We need to redevelop that and remind our executives of our superpower in that, again, to be indispensable. Another example is just in time. um, we're always like, operating like, the clutch, right? We're always just in time operators, always showing up just in time with the just exactly what they needed, when other systems fail. A good example of this right now is as companies are, downsizing, and they are removing some C-suite officers. For example, let's say a chief revenue officer of a small startup,
Mm.
they still need to do sales. So sales doesn't stop. They maybe remove a VP of sales, but sales doesn't stop. But sales are being CEO led now. They're not depending on, another executive. Now the CEO themselves is taking on sales. Well, when the CEO is taking on sales, that means you're taking on sales, right? Because you're supporting the CEO. So the task managing, that, keeping the trains running on time and task managing that. And you're not driving the sales, but what you're doing is you're doing the handoff, right? Between the CEO and the sales team, between the CEO and the RevOps team, between the CEO and the contracts team. And the
Mhm.
CEO, if they're only going to make one call in a 15-minute layover, on a plane ride, and they're checking in on sales deals, they're going to call you because you're the one who's doing the handoff. So a lot of our coaching has been around stepping into these transitionary roles as executives themselves have exited the company. Another example, that's sales. Another example is people, HR. HR leaders are, in some ways, a luxury right now for small startups under 100 people. And
Yeah.
HR leaders have been let go, after they've, had to let go, of course, many employees themselves. And the
Mhm.
executive assistant, the trusted EA to the CEO, is taking on payroll, is taking on people operations, is taking on performance review management, and is even taking on employee relations and severances. And so I'm coaching a lot of our clients, a lot of our TAC,
Yeah.
TAC coaches on that. Is how do you step into your HR muscle, which requires a very different kind of perhaps training and muscle than you're used to. Although many EAs to CEOs are very nimble at it, I would argue, because they've always had a poker face in the office. They can't ever share what's actually going on behind the scenes because you have access to so much more than anybody else has access to. And so your ability to be the head of HR, interim head of HR during this transitory period is actually, perfect, I would argue. And it allows you to stretch your role and opportunities, allows you to learn new systems. Okay, now you have to learn Gusto or Rippling or ADP or paychecks.com or payroll or Paylocity or Deal for
Yep.
international payroll, et cetera. But it's good for you. It's good for you. And as digital natives, it's something that you could also allow you to expand your own role in the next phase of what your company's growth may be in 2024.
Yeah. I want to double click on both those things as when I'm looking at the poll, we have, a handful of people who are coming from earlier stage startups, and that's absolutely something we see in earlier stage startups. And then we also have people who are coming more so from growth companies. And so a lot of the stuff we're talking about, it is very size and company like stage specific, right? And so what Al-Hussein's talking about in regards to like HR and people management, we see that much more in companies, like he said, sort of sub 100, sub 150 people, because it's such a natural transition for executive assistants and chiefs of staff to move into that people operations function and take over things like culture amp and culture surveys, do HRIS platforms, because let's be honest, EAs and chiefs of staff tend to have really high EQs, right? You have this high level of empathy, you have this high level of emotional intelligence. And so it's a very natural transition and an easy extra task and project for people in this way who are also usually very detail oriented and very task, move things forward, which are things you have to do. That's pretty common. It's going to be less common to see that happen in much larger companies. At that point, then it becomes a full-time job. But that's something that if you're working in an early stage company, doing that type of work is a really great way to raise your hand and make yourself indispensable in the role. And I do want to also click on that, what you said about sales, especially in, again, earlier stage companies when your CEO or your executive is doing business development. Because I know I leverage Rachel like this here at TAC. Like she is very much helping me keep track of deal flow. She's making sure that we use HubSpot, like our deal flow system is constantly up to date. She's helping me follow up with clients that we send proposals to. She's even helping me put together those proposals. There's so many ways in which an EA and chief of staff can facilitate the sales process, whether it is putting together decks, putting together proposals, sending follow-up emails, bumping the messages up to clients after you send them to them. Because sometimes there isn't an existing sales team. Like the sales team is the CEO in the beginning, right? And so that's on a much smaller scale. And then as it gets bigger, like Al-Husein said, and you do have a sales team, a lot of that is more so being the facilitator between the sales team and the CEO, because sometimes the CEO is the one who needs to come in to close the deal, right? And you're the master time manager and calendar owner, and like, hey, this meeting supersedes everything else. We need to close this deal to move revenue forward. And so that's kind of I think the big differences and something worth speaking about depending on the size and stage of the company.
100%, Megan. And, just to bring it back to how we started the conversation, look, we went in 2020 from growth at all costs to 2023 to keep the lights on, right? But what is true about us? What is true about you as executive assistants? The one thing I know that is true about executive assistants is that we show up. We always add value, always, whether irrespective of how the business is going. The business is going sideways, we're adding value. If the business is going up, we're adding value. If the business is going down, we're adding value. Remember, your role is a shadow, a reflection of the CEO. Your role is as a reflection of the executive you support. It's not a reflection of, your friend in engineering or your friend in customer support or your friend in marketing. You represent the company as well. And as such, your role and responsibility is to always add value and put the company first, right? And in ways that I'm seeing right now with some of our clients in our coaching, as people are returning to office and as people are returning to work, reminding the executive assistants and these business partners of executives saying, look, remember, you guys are the culture carriers, right? Reclaim that mantle, right? Like there's going to be a holiday party this year, potentially for your company. Okay, it may not be for everybody. It may be for a certain office. It may be for only the executive team. How can you help? Okay, there's not going to be a holiday party. Okay, what can you do instead? What can you do instead? Handwritten notes from the CEO. Can you write them? right? Okay. Yeah, we can't, everybody's tired of this virtual stuff. Okay. Is there something you can do for your executive instead in a way that conveys value to uplift the business? That is our role at the end of the day, is to always add value.
To double click on that is, raise your hand. And if you see a pattern or you see somebody came in and hawing and saying, oh, like I kind of need help with this, or oh, I'm really behind on this task, raise your hand and say, can I take that off your plate? Or what can I do? I noticed that you're having a hard time getting these materials over to us by this date. Like, can I help you put those materials together? Right. And be really specific when you raise your hand. And I kind of jokingly say, even internally in our team, like be a little pushy and be specific when you're pushy. Because if you just ask your team, oh, what can I do to help you? You're making it too broad. And then they have to sit and think, what can this person, like, I don't know, I don't even know how to begin like delegating something. But if you're really specific and say, hey, can I help you edit that deck? Let me go ahead and just do a quick proofread for you, right? Or um I'm trying to think about like even internally at TAC, it's, let me help you edit that resume for a candidate. Like you don't need to do that. Let me take that off your plate. Or can I take a stab at updating the company website? Or can I take a stab at putting together a company culture survey? If these are things that don't currently exist in your company, this is an easy way to raise your hand and ask to take on more.
So the question came in about burnout and being
Yeah.
stretched too thin. Uh, look, uh, it's always a balance, right? It's always a balance. You know, to know thyself is to know God, right? And so if you can figure that out, you won the game. Okay, congratulations. I look, executives are going through it too.
Yeah.
So you feel it, executives are feeling it, probably even more so. The
Mhm.
pressure on executives these days is much more and more intense in a way that's uh, more challenging even than 2020, because of the macro and the tightening of resources across the globe. Um, I would say that if you have the opportunity uh, to take time off, that you take that opportunity. But if you do so, make sure you have a coverage plan. If you don't have coverage, I mean, you can't have task what you're supposed to be doing when you're off to somebody else. Um, have a conversation with your executive about when they're taking time off and try and match your time off to theirs. I think taking time off is, will help the symptoms, maybe not the fundamental problem of burnout, but it does help. Megan, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I'd take a really hard look at. I think time off is important. 100% double click. Like, think that's the best thing you can do. Even if it's just a day here, a day there to truly unplug. I'd also take a look and say, raising your hand and like, knowing your bandwidth and making sure you're taking stuff on that makes sense. And also take a fresh look. We're even doing this right now at Tech Advisors and taking a fresh look at our systems and our tools and our processes and saying, does this make sense? Are we being as optimized as possible, or are we doing any redundant work or doing things in a less optimal way? A really great book to read and a conversation that we're having right now is with Nick Sonnenberg of Come Up for Air, where he really has a framework for being as productive and optimized as possible and simplifying the work that you do so that you're not having decision fatigue and just fatigue in general of doing a ton of different tasks in a really sort of unreasonable, repetitive way. And so if you can make yourself an optimization expert and make your role as easy as possible, that's going to give you more bandwidth to take on more. Right. And so I think it's twofold. One, you have to take care of yourself at home and in your personal life so that you can come to work giving as much as you possibly can, but then also make sure that the work that you're doing, like you're constantly auditing yourself and saying, is the work that I'm doing making sense? And am I doing this as productive as possible? Leveraging tools to do your job faster and easier. Um, Things like Zapier, communication, streamlining it with Slack, doing tools like Notion. Like there's so many, a lot of these tools we talked about today are going to make your job a lot simpler and therefore give you bandwidth to take on more.
Yeah, and guys, it's, something that the pandemic taught us, and, we're still learning the lesson for is it really just boils down to three things that we do every single day. And it's so basic that it actually hurts to hear, but I'll say it anyway.
Mhm.
The first is manage and monitor your sleep. The second is manage and monitor your diet.
I have an aura ring.
Yeah.
Big fan.
And the third is manage and monitor your exercise, right? Diet, sleep, and exercise. You can't take care of others if you can't take care of yourself, right? You are the giving trees, remember? Right? You are the giving trees. So make sure you give to yourself as well.
Awesome. Well, I want to open it up and see if we have any questions. I think we touched on a lot about tools and systems. The kind of key trends we've seen around during times of growth. It's being able to help manage and build EA teams. It's helping with doing things like fundraising and investor relations. And then during times of maybe stagnation or decline, it's managing people and people operations and reductions in force and trying to save as much money for the business as possible. Are there any other questions that we want to open it up to the people who are here of other tools or responsibilities or tasks that are kind of top of mind right now? No? Okay.
Folks are typing in. Remember, it's September right now. Halloween's around the corner, and after Halloween comes the holidays. Now's the time to start thinking, what can you do for your teams, your executive, in whatever budget you have allocated to you that's special, unique, that adds value to the company, that keeps the company moving forward when it comes to building culture and morale in a way that's force positive for the executive, right? And so helping manage that is going to be very important in the coming months ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Al-Husein, I've really enjoyed spending time with you today and doing this quick sort of synopsis of our coaching over the past few years and everything that's joined. And I really appreciate everybody who's been joining us today and asking great questions. And if you have any other questions about coaching, I know Al-Husein shared our information in the chat. You can always reach out to us. We, are here to help. We would love to help you kind of continue to level up your career. And as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all.
Bye.